The longsword is an offensive powerhouse that boasts many strengths: exceptional reach, power, and adaptability. Its fluidity in chaining combos and counters in order to unleash an onslaught of attacks makes it unstoppable in the right hands. This is the complete guide for longsword in Monster Hunter Wilds. Before we begin, please keep in mind the following. I will be explaining controls in terms of the PlayStation controller layout and keyboard and mouse. I use PlayStation as a preference, and I'm sure there are a good number of keyboard and mouse players out there. For Xbox and other general control schemes, please refer to the graph below to see what the corresponding button press would be for you. And if you're on keyboard and mouse, I suggest binding the following. I personally feel this configuration will help you play longsword better on mouse and keyboard. Now, if you don't have a thumb button on your mouse, you can stick to default or find another configuration that might work better for you. Next, let's quickly go over what the weapon is all about. The longsword is a weapon that is very aggressive in nature, allowing you to chain several attacks and counters fluidly. The weapon is relatively straightforward, with several moves that provide great bursts of damage and various ways of mitigating damage from monster attacks. It also boasts one of the longest melee weapon ranges, meaning it's easier to hit higher body parts. On the flip side, the overall effectiveness of the weapon is heavily gated by your monster knowledge or how well you can read and react against a monster's attack. It also requires you to manage your resources, like your spirit gauge and spirit level, in order to eke out the most damage possible. Because it has so much reach, you're more likely to flinch your fellow hunters in a multiplayer quest. To top it off, there is absolutely no guarding. You have to rely on your counters or iframing to mitigate all forms of damage. First, let's explain how the spirit gauge works. As you perform regular attacks, you build up spirit gauge, which will allow you to perform several moves, such as the Spirit Blade combo, or Spirit Combo for short, and the Foresight Slash. After performing certain moves like the Spirit Round Slash or EI Spirit Slash, your spirit gauge levels up as indicated by the colors of your gauge, in which there are 4 in total: neutral, white, yellow, and red, which is the strongest and alters the properties of certain moves. The spirit gauge and level will deteriorate over time. Spirit level will drop by 1 color should the border around the gauge deteriorate completely. When at red spirit level, both gauge and level will deteriorate simultaneously. You can replenish some of your gauge by performing certain attacks, but before we get into that, we'll go into the basics first. Longsword has 2 draw attacks. By pressing triangle or left click, you'll perform the overhead slash. By pressing R2 or the mouse button, you'll perform the Spirit Blade 1, which we'll get into more later. You can keep pressing triangle or left click to do 2 overhead slashes into a crescent slash before it loops again. You can also hold forward while pressing the button to take a step forward with overhead slash. The other combo loop is much quicker and is performed by pressing circle or right click to do a thrust into a rising slash loop. You can loop and mix between the 2 combo loops, but understand that triangle or left click attacks will always chain into rising slash, while circle or right click attacks will always chain into overhead slash. Also keep in mind the difference in speed between the 2 combo loops, as this will be important for later. Should you find yourself running up a climbable wall, pressing triangle or left click mid-run will perform the jumping rising slash, which can be followed up by a jumping slash by pressing triangle or left click, or even jumping Spirit Blade with R2 or mouse button 5. If you're jumping off from height or from the back of your sacred, you can only perform the inputs for jumping slash or jumping Spirit Blade. One thing to note, Spirit Blade can be chained into the rest of the Spirit combo. Also, at red spirit level, you'll perform a jumping Spirit Blade 3 instead of 1, which will immediately chain into Spirit Blade 3. While sliding down slopes, you are also able to do the jumping rising slash by pressing triangle and left click. If you press R2 or mouse button 5 while sliding, you'll perform the aerial Spirit Blade draw, which can go into Spirit Round Slash with enough spirit gauge. By pressing triangle and circle at the same time, or left and right click, you'll perform the Fade Slash, which is a dodge attack. Keeping your left stick neutral or pulled back, you'll Fade Slash backwards, while holding left or right will let you perform a lateral Fade Slash in the direction you choose. Fade Slashes are great for repositioning while attacking, in addition to generating quite a bit of spirit gauge. While on the back of your sacred, Pressing triangle or left click will allow you to do a mounted attack up to 2 times. While not particularly great, it'll allow you to take pot shots at enemies while mounted. Pressing triangle and circle, or left click and right click simultaneously, will perform the dismounting attack. The startup of the animation acts as a counter where you'll negate damage in addition to raising your spirit level. You can also follow up into a number of attacks after landing. And finally, the mounted finisher will have your character draw slashing right off the monster before sheathing, knocking it over in pure style. This should cover all your basic attacks. Next, we'll go over the special attacks. By pressing R2 or mouse button 5 and using a portion of your spirit gauge, you'll perform the Spirit Blade 1 attack, which can be followed up 3 more times to go into Spirit Blade 2, Spirit Blade 3, and finally, the Spirit Round Slash, which will level up your spirit level. Spirit Blade 1 and 2 can be shifted laterally, forward, and backward, depending on your directional input. Spirit Blade 3 will only ever move forward. You can also stall your combo by thrusting repeatedly to get a little bit more damage and spirit, and continue on to the next step of the spirit combo whenever you're ready. You can also chain between your regular combo loops into Spirit Blade, and Spirit Round Slash can continue into either combo loops in addition to the Special Sheath, a move which we'll discuss later. One important thing to note is that each Spirit Blade has built-in Mind's Eye, meaning your attacks will not bounce off of hard surfaces. Another thing is that red spirit level, Spirit Round Slash gains hyper armor properties, which means that you won't get knocked out of the animation, but may still receive reduced damage. The Spirit Charge is a neat new addition to the Longswords kit. By holding R2 or mouse button 5, your character will begin to charge their spirit, with each subsequent flash representing a Spirit Blade level skipped. Charging it up all the way will allow you to skip straight to Spirit Round Slash. Important to note is that Spirit Charge can be held down for as long as you have stamina. You can also aim and move your character freely, albeit very slow. You can drop the Spirit Charge by either rolling or dropping the charge. Next, we have the Spirit Thrust, which can be performed by pressing triangle and R2 or right click and mouse button 5 simultaneously. Your character will thrust their longsword forward and at white spirit level or higher will kick off and jump into the air to automatically do a Spirit Helmbreaker, one of the kit's high damaging moves at the cost of 1 spirit level. You can also change the direction of your jump and attack by holding a direction as you go up and pressing triangle or R2, or on mouse and keyboard, left click or mouse button 5. If you think you're going to miss, you can always press square or shift in midair to cancel out of the attack, preventing spirit loss. To ensure the maximum damage, Spirit Helmbreaker is at its best at red spirit level. There is also hyper armor at the startup of Spirit Thrust, so if you're feeling spicy, you can time your thrust against a monster's attack. By pressing R2 or mouse button 5 immediately after a Helmbreaker and at the cost of another spirit level, you'll perform the Spirit Release where your hunter will unleash a flurry of slashes. So long as you make contact with the monster once, all hits should make contact even if they move away. You also get hyper armor during the animation, allowing you to power through a monster's attack. Next up, we've got Focus Mode. Attacking while in Focus Mode can help you aim several attacks or even help you change your facing direction. Great examples include your combo loops, Foresight Slash, Special Sheath, and Spirit Release. Experiment and see what works best for you. By pressing R1 or Shift while in Focus Mode, you'll perform the Unbound Thrust, which has a similar animation to the Spirit Thrust. If you hit a wound, your character will perform a couple of slashes followed by a couple of lacerations that can be followed up into most attacks. For each wound that's destroyed with this attack, you'll gain a spirit level. You can influence the direction your character travels, which gives different animations depending on if you go sideways, forward, or backwards. Utilize this attack to quickly gain back spirit levels. Last but certainly not least, let's go over the counters for Longsword. After most attacks, you can press R2 and circle or right click and mouse button 5 simultaneously to perform the Foresight Slash where your character will slide backwards before sliding right back in with a return slash. The entire animation where you slide backwards has iframes or frames where you're completely invulnerable. If you manage to proc the full effect, you will hear a which means the return slash can be followed up into a round slash should you make contact. You can also freely aim the Foresight Slash's trajectory and facing direction. You'll slide backwards relative to the direction that you press. So if you hold right, you'll slide to the left before you swing back to the right. You can also use focus mode to change the trajectory of the swing back. Next, let's go over the special sheath, which is a counter stance. By pressing R2 and X simultaneously, or mouse button 4 after most attacks, you'll go into the special sheath. The starting facing direction is influenced by your directional input, much like Foresight Slash. From here, you have two options. Pressing triangle or left click will perform the EI slash, which draws the sword slashing forward twice. Hitting with EI slash will provide spirit regen for a small period of time. Special sheath into EI slash is particularly useful as a connecting attack between combos. The second option is the EI spirit slash, in which you press R2 or mouse button 5. This counter slash drives you forward and has a delayed hit at the end. While the window is much tighter, you can mitigate damage much in the same way you would with Foresight Slash. A successful counter will let out a while also leveling up your spirit gauge. EI Spirit Slash can chain into Spirit Thrust, Focus Strike, another Special Sheath, your overhead combo loop, or even Spirit Blade 3. Keep in mind, you can only hold the stance for about 3 seconds, at which point you will automatically drop the stance. As mentioned earlier, once you reach red spirit level, several attacks get altered or straight up added to your kit. Your triangle or left click basic attacks get turned into the Crimson Slash, where each button press does multiple slashes instead of one. It goes from Crimson Slash 1 to 3, each with different attack animations. You can freely change your facing direction while pressing attack, and it can be looped just like your other basic combos. The Foresight Slash becomes a Foresight Whirl Slash, which has your character somersaulting backwards while attacking. Your character will not drive back forward like it does with Foresight Slash, and so long as you hit the attack from the whirl, you can follow up with a round slash. And then finally, the spinning Crimson Slash is a follow-up finisher from the Spirit Round Slash, which can be done by pressing R2 or mouse button 5 again after round slash. This attack is particularly useful for two things. It helps you cover a portion of your red spirit gauge, and it's also great for repositioning and closing the distance. Now that we've covered all the moves in the kit, let's go over the general flow of gameplay with Longsword. The general idea is to get into red spirit level as quickly as possible. This means using Spirit Combo or Foresight Slash to get into Round Slash, EI Spirit Slash, and focus attacks on wounds. Once you get into red spirit level, you can do one of two things. You can use Helmbreaker and Spirit Release, or in other words, the classic style of meta play with the newly added Spirit Release. Or you can use the Crimson Slash 1 to Spirit Blade 1 combo loop. Literally just these two attacks. It's kind of mindless and extremely simple, but it's very effective. The classic Helmbreaker Spirit Release spam will do a lot of damage in short bursts, but it does use up 2 spirit levels. And without wounds, it may take a bit to get back into red. On the other hand, the Crimson combo loop, while mindless, is effective at keeping you in red for longer, meaning higher damage overall, while potentially creating more wounds. I personally use the Crimson combo loop in order to eke out as much damage in red before exhausting the rest of my red spirit level with Helmbreaker. This keeps the gameplay mixed and varied and a lot more interesting for me. Play with what works or is more fun for you. Next, let's go over some weapon and armor skills very quickly. To save you some time, here's a chart with some skills for you to consider. Try out different armor combinations once you get to endgame and supplement whatever you'd like with either decorations or talismans. If there are any skills that you're curious in running that you don't find on this chart, give them a try anyways. The skills I have listed here are simply general recommendations for longsword players. For example, you can still run things like attack boost or crit eye if you don't have any other alternatives. Now, there are 4 skills I'd like to demonstrate and explain slightly more in depth. First off, Quick Sheath is a highly recommended armor skill, especially if you plan on using Special Sheath consistently. Special Sheath's speed, especially at level 3, is heavily affected. While it may not be Rise's level of broken, the difference between 0 and 3 is very large to the point where it can actually help set you up for EI Spirit Slashes you wouldn't normally be able to pull off. Next is Adrenaline Rush, which gives a flat attack boost whenever you perfect evade. Your Foresight Slash's iframes will also proc the skill effect, which allows you to counter, raise your spirit level, and get a very quick attack boost. Next up is Counter Strike, which is an interesting skill that provides an attack boost whenever you're knocked away by an attack. attacks with hyper armor can also proc the effect. This means this applies to round slash at red spirit level, the startup of spirit thrust, and basically the entire animation of spirit release. And finally, we have focus, which is an attack skill that serves a couple of functions. It builds meter quicker for weapons like longsword and dual blades, and it also makes charge attacks like the ones you find on greatsword quicker. This also technically applies to the spirit charges animation, but in my opinion, it's not an absolute necessity, even at level 3. It can still be very comfy to run since you'll gain more spirit gauge, but I don't quite recommend this skill. What you should do instead is get more comfortable and familiar with your longsword counters, as it doesn't cost any skill slots. You've got the basics down. Now let's go over some advanced tips. If your weapon is drawn, thrusting is a very quick way to get into either counter options. Because the loop is so quick, you can also use it to stall before you want to execute your counters. Crimson Slash, whenever available, is also good to this end and has the added benefit of quickly aiming your facing direction. When you miss an EI Spirit Slash, you have several options to help you recover. Focus Strike is a great way to get out of the standing animation and can also help you with Spirit Gain. Spirit Thrust can go into Helmbreaker, followed by Spirit Release if the situation allows. And finally, Spirit Charge can lead into various counters or attacks depending on what the situation calls for. Since your counters trigger via the iframes built into the moves, that means anything that makes contact with your counters will proc. In other words, roars and projectiles will proc your Foresight Slash and your EI Spirit Slash. Some applications include using Foresight Slash with focus mode to iframe through a roar while traveling a good chunk of distance. The same thing applies with EI Spirit Slash, but even using Spirit Thrust after the fact. Utilizing the counters in this way can help open you up to a lot of opportunities. While Spirit Charge typically requires you to throw out an attack, you can actually just roll and hold your button during the animation. Also not stated in the guide, you can cancel the startup of Spirit Charge via Foresight Slash or Special Sheath. This is particularly useful in the case of Foresight Slash when you have no Spirit Gauge. The very, very tiny bit of Spirit Gauge you gain from the charge is enough to proc Foresight Slash's counter. If you catch a monster sleeping, you unfortunately don't have many options like Greatsword's TCS for big damage with Longsword. You can, however, do a couple of things. You can Spirit Charge into Round Slash, or you can use EI Spirit Slash with Quick Sheath 3 and a small Barrel Bomb. To perform the EI Spirit Slash Wake Up, drop a bomb, do a Draw Spirit Blade, Special Sheath, and counter accordingly. You can also do this with an advancing Overhead Draw Slash. From there, you can literally go into any option. When it comes to solo hunts, managing your wounds is essential for spirit level and damage upkeep. While it's very tempting to go for a Focus Strike when a wound is opened, you should really save it to do either more damage with your other attacks, or pop it when you need the spirit levels. As mentioned before, each wound popped is a spirit level gained, but if you pop them while in red, that's potentially either damage or instant spirit levels that you're losing out on. Remember, thinking is half the battle, and making conscious gameplay decisions like this can help elevate your skills. The final bit of advice I have for you is to open your mind to the possibilities. The Longsword's kit allows you to deal with quite literally any and all situations. There is always a solution to a problem, and the fluidity of Longsword allows you to cut through anything in your path. Don't be afraid to experiment and unleash your potential. Before we end, here are some content creators I highly recommend that are excellent at longsword. From speedrunners to guide makers, please check out their content to supplement your longsword knowledge. If there's anyone you recommend that isn't listed here, please feel free to post it in the comments. Congratulations on making to the end of this guide. Hopefully, you now have a stronger foundation and understanding on how to use the weapon. You may not be a longsword master overnight, but with time and practice, your skills and mind will be as sharp as your longsword. Practice your craft and cut your path towards greatness. You can check me out on Twitch, where I regularly stream, or support me on my other social media platforms. That's it for me, Cart Masters. As always, stay safe, get mad, get sad, have fun, and I'll see you next time.